When you see countries clashing on the world stage, it's so easy to think it's all about some raw desire for power. But what if it's not really a choice? What if the whole international system itself kind of forces nations into this constant struggle for dominance? Let's dig into the hidden logic that's really driving all this global competition.
It's a tempting idea, isn't it? We talk about countries like they have personalities. This one's aggressive, that one is peaceful. But this explainer argues that's a huge misconception. We're going to see how this so-called drive to dominate might have absolutely nothing to do with a nation's character and everything to do with the system they're all stuck in.
Okay, so this right here is the heart of the whole argument. We're shifting our focus away from some internal desire for power to a powerful external pressure. It's a pretty big idea. What if nations aren't acting aggressively because they want to, but because the structure of the world we live in practically forces them to compete just to stay afloat?
To really get this pressure, we've got to go back in time, because this is not some modern thing. It's an ancient game. The blueprint for how nations compete was laid out centuries and centuries ago.
I mean, for most of human history, the rule of the game was brutally simple: expand or be swallowed up. Whether you're talking about the Roman Empire looking for resources and security, or colonial powers fighting for global trade, expansion wasn't just about ambition. Nope, it was the #1 survival strategy in a world where your neighbor getting bigger could literally mean the end of you. So the crucial point is this: history has been shaped way less by some lust for power and more by the cold, hard logic of survival. To be safe, you had to be strong, and to be strong, well, you needed resources and territory. This created this weird paradox, right? A defensive logic that, funnily enough, often required you to go on the offense. So how does this ancient blueprint still apply today? Well, that historical logic created a set of unwritten rules that still pretty much govern how countries deal with each other. It helps explain why just saying, hey, let's all be friends is, well, it's almost never enough to keep the peace. And this brings us to a really key concept: the mutual distrust structure. Think about it this way: there's no global 911 you can call if another country invades you. Without some kind of world government to enforce the rules, every single nation is ultimately responsible for its own safety. And that forces them to be deeply, deeply suspicious of what everyone else is up to. And here's how that distrust can just spin out of control. Follow me on this. Nation A builds up its defenses, a totally reasonable step for its own security. But Nation B, they can't be sure those new weapons are just for defense. So to be safe, they respond by building up their defenses. And all of a sudden, two nations that might have wanted peace are now trapped in a competitive spiral, driven not by aggression, but by the logic of the system itself. And that gets at what a state really is. It's not a person with feelings or values. It's an organization that is literally designed for competition. Its core mission is to protect its citizens and get the resources it needs, and in a world built on mutual distrust, that mission pretty much requires a competitive posture. This highlights a super important distinction. The average person doesn't wake up in the morning wanting to dominate another country. Most people just want peace. But the state, as this competitive organization, it operates on a totally different logic, the cold logic of survival in a dangerous world. And that means its actions don't always line up with the personal wishes of its people. So if this ancient game is still being played, what's different today? Well, the tools. The way nations compete for dominance in the 21st century, it has been completely transformed. Yeah, as this quote puts it so well, the contest for global influence has fundamentally shifted. It's not just about who has the biggest army anymore. Now it's about who controls the invisible infrastructure, the code and the networks that our entire modern world runs on. These are the new battlegrounds. Modern dominance is all about controlling global supply chains, being #1 in the race for AI and semiconductors, influencing global finance through your currency, and shaping what people think and say on communication platforms. The competition is a lot more subtle, maybe, but it is every bit as intense. So, with this incredibly deep-seated structure of competition, are we just stuck in this cycle forever? Or is a different game even possible? The answer, maybe, is yes, because some powerful global forces are starting to change the incentives of the game itself. The basic math of global strategy is changing. In the past, the benefit you could get from conquering someone, it could be huge. But today, as this chart kind of shows, the costs of that old school aggression are skyrocketing, while the benefits of actually cooperating are becoming way, way clearer. The winning strategy itself is starting to shift.
So what's driving this change? Well, there are a few huge forces at play. Our economies are now so tangled up together that a major conflict hurts everybody involved. Global transparency, thanks to satellites and social media, means you just can't hide aggressive actions anymore. Public opinion on a global scale is now a real strategic factor. And of course, the sheer cost of modern warfare has become absolutely astronomical. So the key takeaway here is this. The fundamental nature of states as these competitive organizations, that hasn't changed. But they are rational. As the world and its incentives shift, their behavior starts to adapt. And for the first time in a very long time, cooperation is starting to look like the smartest strategic move for long-term survival and prosperity. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. The incentives are shifting, and the logic for a more cooperative world is clearer than it's ever been. But can the players in this ancient, high-stakes game actually learn to trust each other enough to play by a new set of rules? Well, that's the great challenge of our time.